Thanks to a recent decision by the EPA, more than 110 million American citizens will now be subjected to increased amounts of cancer-causing corporate toxins in their drinking water. I'm with Farron Cousins tonight. We're going to talk about that. Farron, look, you know, I got to tell you, we all expected the worst from the EPA here because the only way I can describe the EPA lately, I'd say over the last 2 decades really, is a captured agency. The industry has totally captured the agency. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And now that we have, Andrew Wheeler, who is still the acting EPA administrator, he's more than willing to kind of carry on this legacy of let's let corporations do whatever they want to do, and I'm just going to sit here, run this agency, and not actually enforce any of the rules. And that's what we're seeing right now. These chemicals that we're talking about, these are the perfluorooctane sulfonate, PFOSs, and the perfluorooctanoic acid.
Okay, let me give you the history on these because, as you know, I tried the case on one of these.
Right.
What happened was 3M decided that the PFAS was so dangerous that they stopped making it. They stopped manufacturing it. And there's the letter that came out in the trial on PFOA was where they're discussing the idea that they have a responsibility to citizens. They have a responsibility to the government. They have a responsibility to their shareholders to pull it off the market because it is so dangerous, and the toxic cost and the financial cost down the road would be huge. So they pulled it off the market. And so now they're the ones that developed it. They said it's this dangerous. But now we have an EPA administrator who says, Andrew Wheeler says, no, we're not going to actually say it's dangerous. Matter of fact, we're not even going to put any limits on what can be sold, any reasonable limits on what can be sold or what you find in your drinking water. So people are drinking this right out of the tap.
They are. And here's the worst part. You mentioned this has gone on for a long time. And yes, it has. This is not just Wheeler. I mean, the EPA's delayed putting any legal limits on this for 20 years.
Yeah.
So we're going back 4 different administrations at this point, from Clinton to Trump here. They all knew this. They all had the same material, except it's evolved over the years to show even worse things. But even back in the late 90s, they knew this stuff was toxic. They knew it was going to cause cancer. And look, right now, there's no legal limit on PFOAs and PFOSs. Michigan right now has 15 sites contaminated by the PFAS chemicals. They lead the charge. New York, 10 sites, but 110
North
million.
Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina is absolutely contaminated with Gen X. And 110 million people, just to put it that way, if you're standing there with 2 other people, 1 in 3 of you, roughly, percentage-wise, is drinking these chemicals on a daily basis.
Right. And what we know about the chemicals is it's clearly been related to cancer. If you take a look at, we've talked about on this show, take a look at the Devil We Know that's on Netflix right now. It really, really tells the story. Okay, so the point is, I don't really see relief for for consumers. This is an agency that has for 20 years decided, I'm not going to do this. And the reason why is the lobbying money is so big. The influence of these companies that make this is just so monstrous that it's really tough for the consumer to fight back. How does the consumer go to Washington and say, well, what about us? Can we give you some? There's no lobbying money that the consumer gives. And the unfortunate thing, we're going to have to live with this. Wheeler certainly is not going to pull us out of it.
Well, just to make one more note here, the EPA in December 2018, so 2 months ago, they said that these particular chemicals we're talking about, they cause developmental effects in fetuses or women who are breastfeeding, low birth weight, accelerated puberty, skeletal problems, testicular cancer, kidney cancer, liver damage, thyroid damage, cholesterol changes.
And Wheeler, in all that, Wheeler says, no, we're not going to give you any limits that you can actually go by. Another brutal day for journalism as Gannett started slashing jobs all across the country in a cost-cutting move, and the cuts have not been minor cuts. This was followed by major cuts at both BuzzFeed and Huffington Post. Joining me to talk about this is Molly Barrows. Molly, long history in journalism. When you see this happening,
yes,
You've seen it before, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Give me your take. This is not a minor issue here.
No, I mean 1,000 jobs just last week alone. You're talking about journalists, other folks in the media, and these positions are not going to be filled again, especially in the world of digital journalism. And that giant sucking sound that you hear, that is Facebook and Google taking up all that online ad revenue because they do targeted advertising. So media outlets that are maybe even seeing an increase in audiences, they're not able to attract the advertisers like Google and Facebook, which dominate the digital world. The web is their home, that's their turf, and these online media outlets just simply can't compete, Pat.
Is it a credibility issue too? I wonder, you got to wonder, has the public been charmed in this idea that journalism has failed us, that we don't see real journalism anymore? What is your take on that?
I think you're right. To a great extent, when you see these slashes, there have been some critics that say, well, this is the result of bad journalism, or this is the result of journalists who aren't doing their jobs and people don't trust them anymore. And that's sort of the social approach to it, the service part of journalism, if you will. But it has nothing to do with that, and has everything to do with their business model. Now, does trust play a role? And if you're going to choose a social media story, perhaps like a Slate story or a Huffington Post story, you wouldn't necessarily go to their website to find that story. You might see it appear on Facebook, or you might see it on Instagram, or you might see it somewhere else. So they click on that. They're not going directly to the origination, the outlets where these originated from.
Yeah, so part of it also is found in a generational shift.
Yes.
I've seen this coming with HuffPost for quite some time. HuffPost used to be a lot more responsible. Now I call it kind of celeb nosh.
Right.
Is what's happening in the celebrity world. They have one voice where it comes to politics about Trump,
Right.
rather than talking about the Trump story. Why aren't they talking about environment? Why aren't they talking about corporate malfeasance? Why aren't they talking about issues that affect the American worker or the American the American taxpayer in so many different ways? The same thing with CNN. We're going to see this with CNN. I really think CNN is going to be next on this chopping block. But you also have Facebook coming and saying, we want a Facebook news service, right?
That's exactly right. So that's the other danger, I think, in this. If you have Google, you also have Yahoo News. They're actually laying off some people as well. You have Facebook. If they're going to be absorbing a lot of this content that's already out there, then trust becomes basically subjective. People are like, well, it's going to be free for me to get it on Facebook, even if they're borrowing from outlets that I may or may not trust. It's free, as opposed to going and paying for a subscription service to a New York Times or a New Yorker or whoever that you might have to pay for your news. So you mentioned trust earlier. Trust goes out the window when people start charging for journalism. They don't care. It becomes a non-issue. But when it comes to basically Facebook owning this news, then that is the big issue when it comes to trust to me, because we can't trust them. They've been proven to be liars over and over again, and they're going to gear content to what people want to see instead of challenging them.
So we saw a story last week, Farron and I covered, either last week, week before, where you have Zuckerberg coming in telling news organizations like small newspapers that we want to help you. We're here.
They don't want to help.
We're going to spend $300 million to help you be a better journalism vehicle, right? They're not interested in that. They're interested in two things. Facebook, they want to change their image by buying off journalists. And B, they want to own that organization. We got about 30 seconds. What's your take?
I think corporate-owned media in general is what's killing this country, whether it's TV, online, or newspaper. Newspaper's dead. Online is certainly struggling when it comes to online media outlets. TV not seeing the same number of reporters laid off because their advertising revenue isn't being challenged like it is in the digital platform. But corporate-owned media in general, they all want to own your content because you are a barcode to all of them.
Right. Molly, thanks for joining me, okay? This is an important message for our nation's veterans. If you served our country in the military between 2003 and 2015 and you suffered significant hearing loss, you might be entitled to compensation. Because the hearing protection you were issued may be at fault for the damage you suffered, but you need to act now. Your time to make a claim might be limited. Learn more at levinlaw.com/earplugs.